When I go out into the public nowadays, people always have to ask how tall I am. Probably my favorite is to tell them I'm 5'26" or 27. They say, no, you can't be 5 feet tall.
I was tired of people asking me all these questions, and it was just irritating me to death. So on the back of this t-shirt, I wrote answers to questions. Number 1, I'm 6'8½", because that's the first question people ask me is, how tall are you? Number 2, do you play basketball? I don't do hoops.
If we're mingling and I happen to go into the kitchen, there's always a shriek. That's the one place that the hostess has not cleaned on top of the fridge. And she's like, oh, what must be up there? The dirt, the grime. And then she'll hand me a rag and a bottle and say, please clean it for me. How many times has that happened?
A lot.
Dozens.
There was 2 elderly ladies. One of them says, yes, you was the bloke in Star Wars, weren't you? You was in Star Wars. So I said, listen, it wasn't me. I've done some films. I know what I've done. I wasn't in Star Wars. So she's now leaning on the car, leaning on the doorframe, and she turns to a friend and says, man, it's not him. He's a nobody. so I leaned across to her and I shouted out, yeah, but I'm a bigger nobody than you are.
The very tall are very rare. In the United States, the average man is 5'10". The average woman, 5'6". Just 1% of men are over 6'3". Women over 5'10" are equally uncommon. Most tallness is inherited and entirely natural. But the world's tallest people live their lives in the public eye. Ordinary men and women made extraordinary by their very stature.
I think that here in the States, tallness is good, big is good. Advertising is always saying bigger is better, get more. So it's kind of like a mental thing. So I kind of think that way. I'm like, hey, there's more to love, you know?
Atlantic City, New Jersey. Tom Petrovsky is 7 foot tall and perfectly healthy. All his family are above average height. At 6 foot, his sister Terry is the shortest.
Whenever we're together, it is a lot of fun because we are a very large family. My brother's 6'10", I have another brother 6'7", and people will come up to those guys and pointing to me and say, hey, how big is that guy? And then they look at him and they say, hey, what are we, chopped liver, you know? It's probably similar to being a movie star. You know, there's really no place you can go that is safe from people coming up and questioning you, whether it's about basketball or how big is your bed, how do you sleep, what's the weather like, you know, what shoe size do you wear? Just very curious questions. It's not every day you meet someone as big as I am.
Sometimes people can be too curious, as Tom found on a trip to Philadelphia.
One night we went up for Halloween, and as they normally do during this day, everyone would dress in some type of costume and just parade up and down the street, just throngs of people parading up and down. So we were not in costume, but we were there to celebrate, and we were just walking up and down having a great time with friends. And all of a sudden I felt a sharp pain in my shin. And then I felt another one. And I turned around and there was a young guy there kicking me in the shin. And when I finally went, ow, what are you doing? He was like, I really thought you were on stilts. You know, he was trying to get like, I don't know, a rise out of his friends. He was going to kick my stilts out, but he was kicking my shins. And it hurt.
Tom has inherited his tallness from his father. Stan Petrovsky is 6'8". He's been cutting hair for 45 years.
We got the nicest courses, I think, in the country in this area.
They say in Florida you got more holes than people. That's okay. So I got another one.
Stan has adapted the barbershop to his height. The work surfaces in the till are higher than normal, and he's mounted the chairs on 4-inch platforms to bring clients to his level.
Up doing something else, you know? Really? Yeah. Never played a game.
Stan is now comfortable with his stature. But 50 years ago, his tallness made him the butt of cruel jokes at school.
They call you geek, goofy, you know, mutant, you know, things like that. And it hurt, you know, and you didn't know what to do with it. You got angry. and you want to, you become very defensive and you want to come back at them. And I did a lot of times, you know.
Stan's experience made him determined to ensure that his own children would not suffer. He raised them to be positive about their height.
When my family was young, I was really conscious of the whole family, all of them being very tall. And I didn't want them to go through the problems I went through. I felt alone, there was nobody to talk to and all, and I knew that they were going to have problems also. So I thought of puppet shows for them to gain confidence, and we got involved with a little stage, small puppets, and as we got bigger and bigger, they got more confident. They felt good about themselves. Kids started to say, wow, what a job you did, Tom, you know. And he had a ball.
But I'm really happy that he did that, because I still benefit today from that early stuff with holding little puppets up and making squeaking noises and things like that. It was a great thing for him to do.
As Tom grew taller, one potential career became obvious.
People started to respond to me, do you play basketball? Are you a basketball player? It became quite the natural thing to develop into a basketball player. And in the beginning, when I first started playing basketball, my father was actually quite distant. And he was supportive, but it wasn't until I said, yes, I want to do this, this is very important to me, I want to be the best I can be, then he did as any good parent would do, and really started to give his total support.
Stan had left school early to work. He knew that basketball might give Tom the chances he never had. When Tom was 16, Stan took him on holiday. In the United States, universities compete with each other to offer basketball scholarships to the tallest students. At the seaside, it became clear just how keen this competition was.
My father actually took me fishing, which was one of our favorite things to do. And I think he purposely decided to take me to the most southern tip of New Jersey. You could get no further south than this spot.
And lo and behold, there was a fisherman coming up the rocks, and he come close to us. And I said, well, he's a little too close to us because there's a lot of room on these rocks. You know, there's like almost 1/10 of a mile of rocks. And he says, oh, hey, how you doing? He says, are you Tom Petrowski? Because you're tall, right?
As unbelievable as it was, there was actually a university recruiter there pretending to be a fisherman and started to talk to us about scholarship opportunities and how wonderful this school was. And it was obviously a setup.
I can't believe this. I said, we're ready to jump off the rock and swim. We couldn't get away. We just couldn't get away.
And my dad was ready to throw him into the ocean because he was so upset. But some of them went to some pretty great lengths to get your attention.
In 1977, Tom got a basketball scholarship to LaSalle University. His size became the team's key asset.
At the hub of the Explorer's scrappy defense is a tower of strength by the name of Tom Petrowski, the first legitimate 7-footer in Big Five history.
The object in basketball is to do something or anything near the hoop. And as a center, you're always in the core. So I think it's important for a center, especially in basketball, to learn to be able to do everything good, because he's always the closest one to the basket. Then to be a good team, you have to have a good inside strength.
It was also at LaSalle that Tom met his future wife, Cass. Cass is 5'10".
I can remember my mom and dad saying in high school, oh, you'll meet a nice tall boy in college. And then when I brought Tom home, my mom said, well, not that tall, you know. The wedding pictures, there's Tom's family. Everybody's standing up here, and I look like a midget standing down. Like I look like I'm standing in a hole because I'm so much smaller than everybody else. And then when my family pictures came, everybody is standing along, and then there's Tom sticking out looking like he's standing on a stool or something, right?
For 4 years, Tom Petrowski played professional basketball.
Ready? Good, there you go.
He retired from the game to become a teacher and start a family. Both Luke and Matthew have inherited the family tall gene. Matthew is 8, but at 5'2" looks much older.
I think to look at them, they easily could be mistaken for 2 to 3 years older than they are. All right, good. All the way, all the way, all the way. Backboard.
And there was one instance when we had Luke in a stroller. He was 1.5 years old, and he wasn't able to walk far. And a woman actually stopped us and said, "That boy is too big for that stroller." And I just went, "No, I think it's okay, you know." But he was bigger than most children in strollers, and she just assumed that he should not be there.
In the Petrovsky family, tallness is the norm, not the exception. Tom's children are surrounded by role models who are confident in their stature.
I think the grandchildren that are in our family that are going to grow tall are going to be very fortunate because they have tallness around them, and they're going to learn by conditioning and how we react to it. We don't hold it like it's a real hardship. We don't talk about being tall. We hear all these things on the outside, how tall we are, but we are who we are and we live our life and we're busy. So tallness is not a problem with us anymore.
I'm very thankful for the way God made me. I think that he made me 7 foot and as big as I am and who I am for a reason. And I find those reasons out every day. There's always a revelation. My faith in general just gives me a peace as a human being and allows me to just go through my daily walk as a creature of God and have a good time, a big creature of God.
Most tallness is natural, but there are some inherited genetic conditions that can make people grow way beyond average height.
My name is Dave Rasmussen. I'm 38 and I'm 7'3".
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dave Rasmussen has Klinefelter syndrome, a genetic abnormality. Men usually inherit an X chromosome from their mothers and a Y chromosome from their fathers. Dave has an additional X chromosome. XXY males tend to be taller than their fathers and brothers.
My grandfather was 6'6", my dad was 6'5", and I have a brother who's 6'8". My mom is just about 6 feet.
The XXY chromosome is one of the most common genetic abnormalities in male births. It occurs as often as 1 in 750. But although XXY men are common, few of them display the kind of symptoms seen in Dave.
My mother used to grow plants in the house, and when you grow plants in the house you have to use grow lights to simulate natural sunlight. So I tell people that she mistakenly put grow lights in my room and the plants didn't do so well, but I shot right up.
At the age of 12, Dave was just over 6 foot. Over the next 4 years, he would gain 13 inches. His height began to create unusual challenges for him around the home.
I never had a bed that was long enough. So what I typically would do was put a chair at the end of the bed and I put my feet on that. And in the wintertime it was cold, I'd wear socks. Since I was so used to putting my feet off the end of the bed, I will still to this day sometimes want to stick my feet off the end of the bed.
Dave's stature presented physical challenges, but he also faced social difficulties at school.
Kids are cruel, and if you're different, whether it's tall or short or fat or something, they always find the different person is the one to make fun of. So it was difficult as a child, but it was upsetting at times. I imagine there were days when I went home crying, but I don't remember being upset for an extended period about it. I think my height tended to isolate me a little bit, so I delved more into music. music was probably where I spent a lot of time, and of course when you're a young student, your mother gets you private lessons, you have to practice to make those lessons worthwhile, so yeah, that took a chunk of my time.
Today, Dave has a successful career as a computer programmer for the University of Wisconsin. But although he keeps fit, he's become concerned about his health.
I'm very narrow-chested, and because of this, my lung volumes are less than what a person my size should be. So, in fact, the doctors have measured my lung volume. It's about 60% of what it should be.
In recent years, Dave has noticed a shortness of breath and an irregular heartbeat. He's worried that he might have another, more serious genetic condition which can also cause tallness. Marfan syndrome. Marfan syndrome is named after Antoine Marfan, a French pediatrician. In 1896, he described a 5-year-old girl whose arms, legs, fingers and toes were disproportionately long and thin. Today, one of the world's leading experts on Marfan syndrome is Dr. Reed Pieritz.
Dr. Pieritz?
Yes, David.
Dave Rasmussen.
Marfan syndrome affects the connective tissue, an essential component of all the body's organs.
I know that you have a concern about Marfan syndrome, but what...
It is currently diagnosed by a thorough clinical examination which looks for abnormalities throughout the body.
No one has come out and said, David, you definitely have Marfan syndrome.
No.
Okay.
Dr. Pieritz's first priority is to check Dave's heart. The largest artery above it is called the aorta. In the most serious cases of Marfan syndrome, the aorta can tear. If it ruptures, the patient usually dies.
I'm concerned because I had a friend here who had intensive Marfan syndrome where